are you doing today? Welcome back to another week of the KBCR TV show with me, Michelle Green, as we talk about credit and financial tips. Yay! I'm so excited to be back another week. We are excited to jump in. Today's topic is what is an emergency expense and what is not? What do you consider to be an emergency expense and what do you consider not to be an emergency expense? Let's talk about it. But before we get into that, I want to make sure that if you're watching us for the first time, we are Kingdom Builders Credit Repair. And what we do here is we teach all things credit. We show you how to play the credit game. We teach you about how credit actually works. So I want to start out by making sure that you have subscribed. Make sure that you have set your notifications so that you can connect with us everywhere at kb.michellegreen, who we are powered by CTR Media Network. So you can catch us on any streaming services, Apple TV, Android TV. You can catch us on the actual CTR Media app. You can even catch us on Roku TV and Amazon Fire. You can catch us everywhere. So make sure that you are connected to us so you'll never again miss another KBCR TV show. Awesome. All right, let's get into our topic today. Like I said, today's topic is about what is an emergency expense versus what is not. So when I think about an emergency expense, the first thing that I want to think about, well, the first thing that I actually think about is what are our necessities? What are the things that we absolutely cannot live without? What are the things that we know that we have to deal with? And in that whole arena of my mind, what I'm thinking about is we got to recognize that a emergency expense is something that is unexpected. Okay, so let's talk about the things that are unexpected. All right, then we want to look at something that is necessary for us to survive. So if you think about a emergency expense, what does it take in order for you to survive and actually live a abundant life? So what is something that you absolutely cannot live without? All right, so something that's unexpected, something that you have to survive. And then let's talk about the things that are time sensitive. When we think about time sensitive things, things that are actually urgent and important, things that are at the top of our priority of the day, something that may have just occurred in the moment that was completely unexpected, that was something that was necessary for survival, but it is also urgent and it has to be handled right now. That is something that we consider to be a emergency expense. And then something that is not a part of your normal budget. So your monthly budget that you normally are paying out bills and debts for, this is usually the situation where it is not a part of your regular routine of budgeting or your regular routine of money that you pay out to your utilities and to your credit items. So that's how we know, number one, that this is a emergency expense versus something that is not. All right. So now that we got that part out of the way, something that's unexpected, something that is necessary for survival, it is time sensitive and it's not a part of our normal monthly budget. Now we can dive into some of those emergency expenses. So, one of the top priority emergency expenses is in the event that you are laid off or you're fired or you have some type of situation where your job closes. So we think about that as something that is going to affect our income. So if you have a business or if you are an employee or independent contractor, volunteer, or intern, then you know that if you remove the income that you have, that's going to be considered an emergency expense. So what do we need to do on the flip side of making sure that our emergency expense is taken care of. One of the things that we need to do is make sure that we always have a backup plan to make sure that we're not just solely dependent on one way of earning an income. Now, I've said this so many times before. We have to think about the fact that we have to consistently make money. And I don't think that we really truly understand or have really grasped this idea or this concept very much, because there are so many of us who still wrestle with whether or not we're going to go to work every day. There are so many of us that wrestle with whether or not we're on the right job or whether we're doing the thing that we love or not. And it's really not so much about that as much as it is about the fact that we got to have that consistent income. So, our first emergency expense is really dependent upon the income that we have, because the income that we have will directly impact everything else in our life if we don't have the income to take care of our expenses. So, how can we offset that? We got to put in place the right type of employment, the right type of business. We have to make sure that there is consistency around us just understanding that we got to do what we got to do, y'all. Okay, whether you are a business owner, you're thinking about being a business owner, that is absolutely fine for you to think about. But you have to know that if you don't have the right security of income in place, then you're going to fall into a emergency expense at multiple times throughout your life. And I say multiple times, that means like clearly, if you don't have the right kind of money coming through, then you're going to always have to struggle with wondering whether or not you can take care of the unexpected, wondering if you can even survive, trying to figure out, okay, well, even though I got all these utilities and these debts, these things that are on my credit, now that I promised that I was going to pay, and I'm in a position where I don't have the money right now, how are you going to come out of that whole expense problem? So, an emergency is understanding that you got to have the right frame of mind to consistently keep that income flowing. That's number one, hands down. Now, number two is going to be something that we all have probably incurred at some point in time or another, and that is a health expense. When we look at our income and we look at whether or not we are physically able to continue to come to that job or work our businesses, then we look at what is the condition of our health. A emergency expense is any type of medical debt. Do you need to get your eyes checked? Do you need to get your hearing checked? Do you need to get your mouth fixed? Okay, come on. Why are we waiting so that things get to a point where we cannot even bear it anymore before we take action on our health? We have to think about the emergency expense right now. So, are you dealing with something that is absolutely urgent? It is time sensitive. If you don't get this taken care of physically in your body, then it is something that could really wipe away your entire income. We don't want to put ourselves in that kind of position. So let's look at taking care of our health. Go ahead to that gym membership that you paid for the whole past year. Go to the gym. Stop sitting around talking about you should go to the gym or I need to go to the gym, but say, get up and go and do it. Get in there, go do the workout. Once you're in a different environment, you'll be able to overcome the issue of having the health problems that you had, because now you're taking the initiative, you're being proactive, you're actually overcoming the emergency expense. Okay, once we got that in place, we want to look at our home, and we want to see what in our house it needs repairing, that would be an emergency. So for example, something like a leaky toilet, something like a water flow problem, something like, your washing machine or dryer breaking down. It's most people don't feel like that's a emergency expense, but in my book, it is an emergency because these are things that relieve the pressure of you being at home and being able to have peace of mind. So anything that is going to disrupt your peace of mind, things like having electricity, things like having water flow consistently like it's supposed to, and being able to wash your body, wash your clothes, clean your house, even, whatever the use of water is put to, we got to think about that. Hey, wait a minute, we need these things and they are an emergency expense. Also, when we think about nowadays, now back in the day, this wasn't a necessity, but now it actually is, and that is having the internet. If you don't have the internet, then how are you working on a computer? How are you actually keeping up to date with maybe applying for a new job, being able to do the work that you need to do on the computer for your business? So I know that back in the day, that internet usage was not a necessity, but if you think about everything that it takes for our household to be ran and for us to have less stress in our houses and to be able to have peace of mind, we really do require the necessity of the expense of the internet. So get your Wi-Fi right. Stop delaying paying that internet bill and make sure that you don't have like a lot of different apps and different things that you got to go to. Cancel those extra apps, but make sure that you have the right internet, the right mindset for the internet subscription that you need, because these are things that are emergency situations, okay? They are things that we depend on now in order for our livelihood of our life, our credit, our finances to be intact. Now, I know some of y'all might not agree, but I'm telling you, you will eventually find that you will be stressed out if you don't have the right Wi Fi in place. If there's a problem with your Wi Fi and you become dependent upon, maybe using your computer, or if you're going to school or whatever you need the internet for, you will realize that this is a necessity. So get the internet bill corrected. If you have been late on the internet bill, go ahead and pay those people. Make sure that it's up to date and current, because this is what relieves stress. Okay, so that is an emergency. Now, we already know that we can't be having the light bill, the water bill, the cable, the internet streaming services. We can't be having those things be cut off. If we're in a situation where those things are at risk to be cut off, then we are telling ourselves that we can't even live a basic lifestyle. And to not be able to live a basic lifestyle, y'all, that's always going to incur an emergency eventually in our minds, in our bodies, physically. And then before you know it, we are dealing with an income issue on a whole different level. So we got to understand that we as people have certain necessities, and these necessities that we need, even though they may seem like they're not a basic necessity, they're not an emergency, they're not something that we really need to have. I'm telling you right now, just for you to be generally at peace and to have, comfort in your home, you need to make sure that these types of things are taken care of. So, what is an emergency and what is not? Your basic living expenses. So far, we have covered the income, we have covered the utilities, we have covered your health, making sure that you're in the position to be able to cover all of those expenses, regardless of whatever it is. We got to make sure that those three components are covered as an expense. Now, I want to go into making sure that we know what is not an expense emergency expense as well. So, what is not an emergency expense is getting our hair and our nails done. Okay, ladies. And what is not an emergency expense is going to the barber shop. One of the things that I have realized over time, especially in the past 30 plus years that I've been doing credit and finances as a financial advisor, is that we pick and choose what things that we feel like are an emergency. So it's not an emergency to go get your nail fixed if you broke a nail. It's not an emergency to go and buy some new hair or to go to the barbershop every single week or every single 2 weeks just because that's something that you love to do. Now, am I saying take away the things that you love? Absolutely not. But what I am saying is that is it an emergency in order for you to survive? Is it something that is so unexpected or such at a level where it's going to cause you to break down? Absolutely not. That is not the case for our grooming. So, as we look at the things that we need to take care of, I want us to understand that sometimes we can take some things off the plate so that we will understand it's not an emergency expense. It is a pleasurable. It's something that we would prefer. It's not something that is an emergency, though, if it does not pertain to our survival. If it's something that is a part of our regular routine and we're just used to doing it, that's one area, but that's not an emergency expense. Okay. And I wanted to talk about this because I want us to understand like, we got to stop with the whole, I got to have these things this way. I got to do this way. I got to have my grooming intact, my nails intact, my lashes, ladies. I got to get my face beat every now and then. I got to have all of these luxuries, but those are just pleasurable preferences. Those are not emergency expenses that we need to be taken care of and wondering at the end of it all, where did my money go? Okay, where did your money go? And why don't you have enough money to pay for the things that are on your credit? Why don't you have enough money to take care of the things that are your basic living expenses that are urgent, that are an emergency if you don't handle those things, such as your rent, such as your mortgage, such as your light bill, such as your water bill, such as the internet bill. Those are necessities, those are emergency expenses. Our grooming is not an emergency. But what tends to happen, and what I've seen over the years, is this. I have found for even myself that I have learned how to offset the grooming by doing certain things myself, learning how to do things. In today's time, we don't have an excuse as to why we can't learn how to do something because the internet, the YouTube allows us to look at how to do pretty much everything under the sun. So why are we making excuses as to why we can't cut our own hair, why we can't fix our own hair, why we can't do our own makeup, why we can't do our own nails? Why can't we take care of the grooming that we are usually accustomed to as a luxury or a preference? That's something that we really got to look into and change. Another thing is upgrading a phone. Okay, how many of us want the latest technology? Okay, I'm one of those people. But by me working at Verizon in the past, I worked at Verizon, I think it was for like five to 10 years or something like that. But anyway, the point, 5 years. I worked at Verizon for 5 years. I probably couldn't have lasted for 10 years if I wanted to. But anyway, working at Verizon, one of the things that I learned about a cell phone is you don't want to just jump on the brand new latest phone or the brand new latest equipment just when it first comes out. So I learned that because they got to work out all the kinks. They got to work out all of the kinks in the system of the new equipment. So the first round of the new equipment, you want to kind of let that go by. And the second round, maybe the third round after it's been out for a while, okay, great. So what am I saying? One of the things that we use as an emergency expense is getting a new phone. We spend $1,500 to $2,000 on a piece of equipment that, yes, it is necessary for us to have communication, but it's not necessary for us to have the latest equipment of that communication. Okay, so we got to stop with the emergency expense of I got to go buy me a brand new phone. Because, see, the result is that we're going to fall right back into the line of what really actually is an emergency and us not having enough money to take care of that emergency. So we got to stop with the brand new equipment. Let's wait it out a couple of months, a couple of weeks, and maybe even a year or two until the phone is absolutely unbearable and not able to be used at all. And then we want to think about not necessarily buying the most latest version of a phone. Because when we think about buying the latest version, like I just said, it may not have been that that was the best quality phone for us to purchase, and that a lower grade or a lower version of the phone may be something that would benefit us better because it's been out there longer. So let's look at the fact that we don't want to just use a phone as an emergency expense to upgrade just because the upgrade is available. We don't have to just lock in and say, I got to get a phone right now because the latest equipment just dropped. Okay, so let's scratch that as an emergency expense. Another thing we want to scratch off of the list of an emergency expense is these birthdays and these holidays that we buy into. Right now, we're in a season of graduation. So everybody's buying up stuff, presenting these big backyard graduations and front yard graduations, and we're spending thousands upon thousands of dollars to give the person a gift and to give that person a party, a birthday party, or a whatever kind of party, especially those who are having babies, baby showers, and weddings. We are pouring too much money into these, what we consider to be emergency expenses. These are not emergency expenses, y'all. When I say that we are really consumed almost to the point of an addiction of making sure that we are providing like the best of the best parties that exist. We are sending out invitations so that we can prove to somebody that we have a better party than they did. You know, that is really crazy. Okay, it's really crazy for us when it comes to credit and finances, because if you don't really have an emergency around celebrating life, celebrating a wedding, a baby shower, or a graduation, if you don't really have the money to do that, then what's going to happen is after this, what you consider to be an emergency, yes, we want to celebrate those who have been able to go to school for 4 years, for 8 years, for however many. We want to be able to celebrate the baby. We want to celebrate the marriage. We want to celebrate all the time. But we have become addicted to celebrating. And the thing is that we've become so addicted to celebrating that our actual regular routine of life, that is technically what most of us consider to be boring, boring to pay your mortgage, boring to pay your rent, boring to not travel and go somewhere and do something with somebody. Those are things that we have considered to be so boring that we don't even consider that to be the emergency expense that we need to handle. We don't consider that to be something that it's a basic necessity, but it is definitely something that needs to be on the list of an emergency that we handle all the time, every 30 days, because all credit runs in a 30-day cycle. And if we didn't have the money to pay for it up front and we needed to get it put on our credit, then why do we feel like if we celebrate and do all these other things, that this is an emergency and I ain't gonna go without, and I'm not gonna miss having this party, and I'm not gonna miss doing this for this person because they've been there for me and I've been there for them, and yada yada yada. But then at the end of the day, next month, You don't even have the money to pay your mortgage, your rent. You can't pay your light bill. You can't even supply the food as a grocery bill for your own household. Okay. So, another one of the things that we see all the time is that when it comes to non-emergencies rather, is that we eat out a lot. A non-emergency is eating out. We gotta stop thinking that we gotta just go and do the drive-through every time. I call it a drive-by because technically your money is just going bye-bye as you drive through those drive-through lines. Okay, your money is saying hello and bye-bye as soon as you get it in your pocket, because as soon as you go through that line, that money is out of your pocket, is gone, and it ain't coming back. So, one of the things that I think about when it comes to an emergency is making sure that your house is filled with food, okay? Making sure your refrigerator, your pantry has enough to last you for a couple of weeks, not to just go at it per day. And if you don't have enough money to take care of that per day or per week, per 2 weeks, then what we want to do is we want to stop and look at what is really necessary for your survival. What is necessary for your family's survival? Are you just overdoing it? Are you looking at the expenses that are just absolutely a non emergency expense by going through that drive through every single day, spending $50 to $100 every couple of days? Because drive through fast food restaurants are not cheap anymore. You used to be able to go and get like a $5 meal, but you can't really do that these days and times and feed your whole family consistently if you're looking at 2 to 3 meals a day. By the end of the month, you're talking about spending anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000 just in eating out. So that's what I mean when I say this is really not an emergency expense. An emergency expense is when you don't have any groceries, when you don't have the ability to learn how to cook the food that you buy from the grocery and make a meal for your entire family that will give you leftovers and allow you to be able to make it throughout the couple of weeks that are necessary on all the way through till the end of the month. That is what we need to learn how to do. And overall, what we got to understand about this whole emergency versus non emergency expense is we got to understand that our bottom line is that we're going to have to do the work. Okay. If you're talking about changing your mindset so that your finances can really be intact, then one of the things you're going to have to start to do is really shift your mind on what it is that you really want your outcome to look like. And in order for you to shift your mind, you really got to dive into the fact that these are not emergency expenses. These are not things for you to just go to the store and impulsively start buying up stuff that you don't even need. It is not okay for you to just continue to upgrade to the finest things like a vehicle, getting the latest vehicle or leasing a vehicle when you can own a vehicle. It's so many different things that happen with our minds so that it keeps us in a state of mind or a state of emergency of the wrong things that are really not emergency expenses. So I want us to just walk away from this with the understanding that overall, no matter what you do, you got to understand that you are doing the work. You have to do the work in order for you to be able to overcome what is really an emergency expense versus what is not. We all got to decide that, hey, I got to get up off of my behind and I got to go out and I got to figure out what it is that I got to learn how to do in order for me to offset all of these unnecessary expenses that are not emergency expenses so that I can begin to live the best credit and financial lifestyle that I ever had before in my life. Okay, that's what we got to do in order for us to change our whole financial portfolio. So that's all I have for today. I just want to thank you all for watching. Thank you for, hey Sade, how you doing? Thank you all for watching today. Thank you all for being here. And I hope that this helps you in your credit and financial journey to remember this is not an emergency versus this is an emergency. And these are the things that I really need to focus on in order for me to get my life together with my money and my credit. Okay? Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week, 12:30 to 1 at KBCR TV, powered by CTR Media Network. All right, y'all take care. Bye-bye.